Welcome to the Trinity Health IHA Medical Group Wednesday Wellness Series. Tonight's presentation is titled Parenting 101, and our presenting providers are Trinity Health IHA Medical Group Pediatrician Aimee Pollak, who sees patients at our Farmington Hills practice, which is Trinity Health IHA Medical Group Pediatrics, Orchard, and Behavioral Health Specialist Victoria Guster-Brown, who sees patients both virtually and in person at our Plymouth and Schoolcraft campus pediatric practices. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for logging in tonight to Wednesday Wellness. I am Dr. Pollak, so I'm a pediatrician, like Allison said, over at the Trinity IHA Medical Group Pediatrics Orchard office in Farmington Hills. And tonight, the title of our presentation, Parenting 101, I was going to talk to you guys about some tips and tricks for advice on how to keep your family healthy. And the primary focus of my portion of the presentation is going to be on some nutrition recommendations, exercise, and then a little bit of how screen time comes into the equation with all of this. And so I thought I'd start with a quote. Sue Atkins, I think, said it best, that there's no such thing as a perfect parent, so just be a real one. It is amazing how fast your child grows up. You come home with a newborn baby, smiling, cooing. You blink your eyes and suddenly you have a toddler who's running around causing all kinds of mischief and tantrums. And suddenly they're going to school, getting a driver's license, graduating, and have a family of their own. The most important thing is to be there to kind of lead them through all these phases. You are their ultimate role model. They will follow the advice you give, and just to be their biggest cheerleader. So why do we focus so much on a healthy lifestyle? We do know that nutrition and exercise are very important for both physical and mental health. For physical health, we know that a good diet, exercise can prevent obesity, as well as a lot of the complications that we see along with obesity. So things like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, liver disease, diabetes, sleep apnea, and joint problems. Good nutrition and exercise is also very important for our mental health and has been shown to decrease anxiety, depression, and overall stress level. And just living a healthy lifestyle improves your overall sense of well-being. But it's not easy. I always say you are what you eat. We've all heard that phrase. And so it's very important to start from the very first phases of life. So beginning, with your young infant, when you're introducing purees, making healthy food choices, reinforcing positive behaviors. And as they get older, educating them, teaching them in developmentally appropriate ways, having them be active in meal planning, active in their own nutrition, so that they can grow up and these behaviors are readily reinforced. So for the first year of life, breast milk and formula will pretty much provide the vast majority of nutrients that your baby needs. And this is up until 12 months, the first year. There's a couple vitamins that pediatricians definitely recommend supplementing during that first year of life. The first one is vitamin D. So vitamin D supplementation is recommended for all infants that are exclusively breastfed or for any formula-fed infants that are taking less than 32 ounces of formula a day. Once they hit that 32 ounces of formula a day, there's enough vitamin D fortification in the formula that they meet their recommended daily requirements. Iron is also something that comes up at about 6 months of age, where either breastfed infants will need to be supplemented either through their diet or through actual vitamin supplementation. Formula can be a bit tricky. It is overwhelming when you walk down the formula aisle, the number and the types and brands of formula that's available for parents to buy. My best advice is for formula-fed infants when I'm talking to parents. It's okay to consult your pediatrician. The decision can be overwhelming. If you look, this is just a very small sample of the many, many types of formula that are available. They range from like cow's milk based, soy milk based, low lactose. You got prebiotics, probiotics. You have hydrolyzed, which is basically pre-digested. And the important thing to remember is any American-made formula is regulated by the United States, the FDA, for both its nutritional content and its safety. So sometimes finding the right one, recommendations from your pediatrician can be very helpful. At about 6 months of age is when we start to talk about signs of readiness to introduce puree foods. Some of the specific signs that we ask families about to see if the infant is ready, they should be able to sit with minimal support. They need to have good head control. A lot of babies really start to show interest. So what families will notice is that when you're sitting at the dinner table, even at this young age, the infant will be staring, curious at what you're eating, even trying to reach and grab, take some for themselves. And then the important thing is that when you start to introduce the food, they need to have lost that tongue thrust reflex. So if every time you try to put the spoon in the mouth, they're pushing back against their tongue, this is a sign that they're not ready, and we would say back off for, a week or two. As far as order of introduction of foods around 6 months of age, like I said before, iron-rich foods should be introduced early on. The reason being is that an infant's iron stores become depleted at about 6 months of age, and iron is necessary for red blood cell production. So getting iron-rich foods into their diet early will help prevent them from becoming anemic. When you're introducing foods, we always say introduce one new food every couple of days. That way, if they do happen to have a reaction, we know what the culprit food was, and it makes it a lot easier to figure out if there are allergies. And then in regards to allergies, things have kind of swung over the past 10 years, where now studies are showing that delaying introduction of these high allergy foods may actually lead to an increased risk of food allergies. And so really we're leaning towards the earlier introduction of some of these more highly allergy foods. So like peanuts, dairy products, things like that. And then once you get it figured out with your breastfed, formula-fed, puree-fed infant, soon they grow up to be a toddler, and this is a whole new set of challenges. I always tell families, get ready. Toddler phase is not easy. They're going to have changes in their nutritional requirements. Toddlers notoriously go through phases of being picky. They know what they want, and they know when they want it, and they are not hesitant to tell you. They are messy. So they're learning to use utensils, they're refusing to use utensils, they're learning to use cups, and inevitably food, liquids are going to get spilled all over the place. It's really hard as a parent to not kind of go in and keep continuously cleaning up after them, or just deciding that it's easier to do the work for them and feed them. But it's very important developmentally that they practice these skills on their own. So just know that when your toddler eats, it's going to be messy, and they're very, very distracted. So it's really important to set them up for success and have a quiet eating environment. So if you have Bluey or Cocomelon or one of these other shows playing right down the hall, it's going to be really hard for them to focus on the task at hand. So this is all normal development. Picky, messy, distracted, it's all normal development. We just offer some tips and tricks on how to get through it. So common other things, developing food preferences. So they change, their favorite foods change. I always say, your toddler may love blueberries one day. And so your response is you go to Kroger and you buy all the blueberries in the aisle, you bring them home, and suddenly they like strawberries. So their food preferences change. So don't let this be frustrating. And they also vary in the quantity that they eat. And so this can be within a single day. So some toddlers will have one meal that they eat really, really good, and then they're a little bit smaller quantity, pickier in the other meals. It can vary over the course of like a week, where there's several days your toddler's eating so much that you can't even imagine how they're doing it. And then they'll go a few days eating very minimal, and you don't really know how they're doing that either. So it's really important when they're varying their quantity and kind of their food preferences, that you really look over a period of time to see how are they doing as far as their nutritional requirements. If you focus day by day, that doesn't really work for a toddler. And of course, again, they want to make their own choices. So again, they know what they want, they know when they want it, and they're not hesitant to throw a tantrum and tell you. So some tips we have for picky eating, family style meals always work best. So sitting down at the table together, turning off all the screens so that everyone can focus, modeling good behavior. So eating the same things that you're offering to your toddler, getting really excited when they take bites, over exaggerating how much you love the food. And it really helps too, just having that face-to-face screen-free time to work on some of those social skills. Food fights, stay away from too exaggerated food fights. So if your toddler is not wanting to eat a particular food, okay to encourage, but don't turn it into a battle. You're going to make that negative connection stronger if it's too much of a battle. So if the toddler's thinking, oh, every time my mom serves me broccoli, I don't like broccoli, and then my mom gets really, really mad and there's a big fight, it kind of reinforces that negative association with that particular food. So offering it, encouraging it, and then letting the toddler choose to some degree. The caveat to that is break from bribes. So if you tell them every time you eat your broccoli, you're going to get this treat that they love and is delicious, it's going to really create that differentiation of, I don't like this food, but this food is really, really good. Try again. It's frustrating, but it takes many, many times for some toddlers to become accustomed to certain foods or to like certain foods. So don't get frustrated. Just keep taking breaks and offer a variety of food. That way you can kind of cover all your nutritional groups. Make food fun. So this is where you have the blueberry face pancakes, different ways arranged on the plate just to make it more of an enjoyable, fun, playful experience for the toddler. Involve them in meal planning and prep. So this is when they start to get a little bit older, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Bridging foods. So if your toddler finds a new food that they like, and after they've had it several times, you can bridge them over to a new food that's similar. So the example I often give is if they like carrots and they're eating carrots for a while, then maybe something like sweet potatoes where you're kind of, it's still orange, or there's something that's similar to the new food that they're going to associate with the food that they just found out that they liked. In pairing unfamiliar foods or new foods, or maybe not favorite foods, with some of their favorite foods, that way you know that during the meal they're getting some nutrition and they're eating something, but you're still offering the different choices. So grocery shopping and cooking. So this is more for your toddler, early school age. It takes time. It definitely takes a lot more time, a lot more patience if you're going to do this in an activity, but it really, really is helpful education for your child. It teaches them many things. So you can kind of plan, what couple of meals would you like this week? And then you can help them learn, okay, this is how I make a list of what I need. Teach them some of those organizational and executive functioning skills early on. It might even make them try different foods. So if you're talking about making a food they've never had, it may spark their interest. Or if you're at the grocery store and there's a food that they've never tried before, that may spark their interest too. So it may help you to introduce more foods into their diet. As they get older, it actually helps them practice different reading and math concepts. So when they're reading recipes, you're teaching them how to use the measuring cup. If you have a half a cup, you get a whole cup. So they learn some of those skills too. Much like having a family dinner, it allows time to just engage and have discussion with one another. And you can teach importance of staying safe in the kitchen. So you don't go by the hot stove, you don't handle the sharp knife. So a lot of those skills can be learned other than just as a way to improve nutrition. And I find a lot of toddlers actually respond really well to the eat a rainbow of colors, so what colors did you eat today, and kind of talking about it, throughout the day. Ooh, you didn't have anything green today. What could you try that's green? Sometimes just that visualization will help them. One important thing that I always teach on is out of sight is out of mind to a toddler. So if you can avoid bringing the food into the house, so avoid bringing the high calorie, the processed food, the sugary foods, the sugary beverages into the house, then they're less likely to ask for it. Truthfully, I find it's the same for myself. If I don't bring the junk food into the house, then I'm less likely to snack on it. And so the point would be is to keep the healthy foods available so that when they are hungry, they, instead of going to the cupboard and finding the bag of Cheez-Its or Goldfish, they're able to go to the fridge and see some fruit. So a healthy alternative. And snack time is a great way to incorporate them. So definitely incorporating fruits and vegetables into the various meals, but also adding them during snack time when we're sometimes more likely to grab those easy to grab, quick processed foods. Juice is a common problem that we come across, is the overconsumption of juice in toddlers. To be honest, toddlers really don't need juice. There's not a lot of nutritional value in juice. We'd rather them get their nutrition from whole fruits and vegetables. Juice can have a lot of added sugars in it, depending on what you buy. This can lead to obesity. It can lead to poor nutrition because they'll end up filling up on the juice and then they're not hungry for their regular meals. And also tooth decay from the sugar and juice. So I've clipped in, so this is from healthychildren.org. This is the AAP, so the American Academy of Pediatrics, daily juice recommendations. And if you notice, under a year, there's no recommendation to routinely offer juice at all. 1 to 3, it's really a maximum of 4 ounces a day. 4 to 6, easy to remember, 4 to 6 ounces per day. And then after that, a maximum of really 8 ounces per day. Some people will water it down. I still think you have to focus on the actual quantity of juice. And a really important thing is if you are going to offer juice, try to find some of your more all natural brands. and making sure that it's not consistently in a sippy cup or a bottle where the toddler is carrying it around all day or bringing it to bed at night. And then you have that sugar constantly sitting out their teeth, because this puts them at high risk for tooth decay and cavities. So if not juice, what should they drink? Milk and water are really the preferred drinks for toddlers. We do have toddlers that really don't like milk, but one problem we run into even more often, I would say, is the toddler that loves milk and drinks too much milk. How much milk should they have? At 12 to 24 months, so 1 to 2 years, they should have about 16 to 24 ounces max. At 2 to 3, it's about 16 to 20. The problem is if they're drinking too much milk, couple of things. They're getting a lot of calcium, and that can actually lower iron absorption. So that's like what we were talking about in the 6 months old, that lower iron absorption can actually lead to anemia from drinking too much milk. And also they're just filling up on milk. They are smart. They know that if they walk around with a sippy cup of milk, they can keep walking around, fill up their bellies, and not have to sit and eat. And so by not eating as much of the other foods, they're decreasing their overall nutrition that they're taking in their diet. And then I just wanted to include this table to the right. So there is, a lot of families do choose to use whole milk alternatives. The one thing I always caution parents is to read the labels. A lot of these milks, so when you look at like coconut milk, almond milk, the top two, the energy, so the amount of calories and the grams of protein, can tend to be lower in some of these. And so, even if they're drinking the same quantity of milk, they're getting fewer calories and fewer protein. So that's something that you would have to compensate for otherwise in their diet. Most of them are calcium and vitamin D fortified, but not all of them. So that's another thing, is that if you're using an alternative milk product, just make sure that they're getting the adequate amount of calcium and vitamin D that they need. And this is by all means nothing to remember. I know you're going to get the presentation sent to you, so you can always reference this in the future if you need to. But if you were using an alternative milk, or you just wanted to monitor their diet to make sure they're getting enough calcium and vitamin D, this is the recommended daily intake. And I also showed this to the parents because there are the toddlers that just don't like milk, and that's fine because we can offer other sources of dairy products. And then calcium and vitamin D are in a lot of other things that we can eat. So like salmon, there's fortified cereal, spinach, broccoli. And so this healthychildren.org website that I have at the bottom, I know I've referenced it before already, really good resource for finding some of these nutritional recommendations and sources on how to get nutrition through other ways. And so you figured out your toddler, and then they're growing up, they're getting older. You start to see where you're juggling work, you're juggling activities, they're going to school, they're going to birthday parties, life gets busy. And so as this happens, they get more independent. So they're buying school lunches, they're going off to camp for the day, bringing a lunch to camp. They have social events. So now they're getting invited to birthday parties where there's cake and there's ice cream and there's candy. You're running to and from sports, you're running to and from bands, and you're trying to juggle, well, how do I feed my kids on the fly? And then there's always, changes in dietary preference. So, a lot of kids will start to learn, where does meat come from? And they'll temporarily become vegetarian, or they'll have a peer who practices a certain diet and want to follow that for a short period of time. And so just really, really being in tune with how your child's eating overall, so that you can monitor that they're getting the nutrition that they need. So the dreaded lunch, right? The dreaded lunch. So a lot of kids will choose to buy hot lunch. So that's buying your lunch at school. The best way to help your child make healthy choices during this is to review the lunch menu the night before. So typically every school will come home with their their month list of what they're going to be serving for lunch. And you can kind of just go through with your child and say, okay, these are the healthy choices. This is what I think I'm going to choose. And when they come home at the end of the day, asking them, hey, what did you have for lunch? What were some other options? Why did you choose this? And just kind of reviewing, seeing their choices, rewarding positive choices or good choices, nutritional choices, and going from there. Packed lunches. So the pre-packed lunches, a lot of kids will bring, it's much, much easier, but less nutritious. So these are things like your Lunchables, all those pre-packed combo meals. The best thing to do is really work together to make a lunch the night before. It can probably be a lot easier because the morning rush is always crazy when you have school-age kids. But the same thing, kind of brainstorm with your kids. What kinds of foods would you like to eat for lunch? Find some healthy choices. Work together to pack it. Try to avoid those high processed, high calorie foods. So like chips on the side, cookies, juice boxes, and instead put in some fruit and veggie snacks, some proteins, maybe a healthier beverage choice, and work together to find a meal that they like. And the same thing when they come home, the other problem that we run into during lunch is school lunch times are very fast. So making sure that everything's put into a container that's easy for them to open and eat, because we do find a lot of kids coming home not eating their lunch, and the problem was they didn't have enough time or they couldn't actually access the food. And this is more just for later reference. Kidshealth.org is another great website, but just some alternatives that you can consider when packing lunches. So you're eating healthy foods. Next, you got to get some physical activity, get some exercise. Again, starts at an early age. So little infants doing their tummy time, that is a huge amount of exercise for them. Just making sure, again, our kids like to model our behavior. So infants doing tummy time, get on the floor, roll around, be silly, make it a fun time for them, especially as they get to be a toddler. And then making sure that as they get older, you get outside, you go to the park, you throw the ball in the backyard, you do different forms of exercise with them, again, modeling the behavior. And eventually a lot of kids will become involved in team sports. What are the benefits of physical activity? So, like the original slide, it does improve your health. So it decreases obesity and the comorbidities that we talked about in the beginning of the presentation. It helps build strong bones, increases flexibility. It improves your mental health. When you exercise, your brain releases serotonin, which is a natural mood booster. It improves sleep. It improves focus in school, decrease stress, teaches teamwork and sportsmanship. It improves self-esteem. Kids can learn to set little goals for themselves in sports and accomplish them, and it makes them feel really, really good. And being involved in sports has been shown to be associated with decreased risk-taking behaviors in adolescents and teenagers. And again, another busy slide, but the point I wanted to take home, so if you go to the infant column, really even tummy time, that's their exercise. So making sure infants are getting tummy time and that you're interacting with them during that. As we get to be to the toddler preschool age, they're saying about 3 hours, basically just keeping your toddler and preschooler active and busy. And once we hit that elementary school age, recommendations go up to 60 or more a day. And some studies show that even about less than 25 to 30% of our children are getting that recommended 60 minutes of exercise a day. So really working together to come up with a plan. And the way to make it happen, rule number 1, make it fun. If you don't like doing it, you're not going to do it. So work together with your kid, find an activity that they would like to do, and help to make that happen. And you have to make it developmentally appropriate. I always say a 2-year-old's obviously not going to run a 5K, and an 18-year-old's not going to go want to ride the side of the park or go up and down the side of the park. So really finding something that's appropriate at the developmental age and plan ahead. Life is busy. You have to make time for exercise. You have to provide a safe environment and toys. So maybe just at home, making sure that you have balls that they have to kick and throw outside, a safe area to run around. And you can also look, there's opportunities through your local community centers and school districts to get your kids involved. And again, keeps going back to being a role model. If your kid sees you exercising and being happy and healthy, they're more likely to do it. I put this in here, so rainy days, you have a toddler preschooler, it's rainy, they're got all their energy and you're trying to find ways to help them get their energy out through exercise. American Heart Association has some things on their websites for some fun activities to have kids do indoors. So you can do this almost like a Simon Says, but where you're just calling out activities and they're doing it. Some other good resources are Go Noodle, is a website or app that has some activities for kids. And then you can even YouTube like kids yoga and different things, just to get them active when they're stuck inside. And just keeping things available. So things running to the park, going for a bike ride, shooting baskets, throwing a ball in the backyard, just anything you can do to keep their body moving. And again, spending time together as a family. So even like family walks, family bike rides, family baseball games, family trips to the park, is all just more opportunity to interact with one another. And then really briefly, touching on screen time. Screen time is important because we all spend so much time on our screens that it's one of the primary inhibitors of having the time to get the exercise that you need and to put the time into getting the nutrition you need. This was actually data from the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry in 2020, where I mean, teenagers, if you see the bottom line, spend up to 9 hours a day on screen time. It's a lot. So why do we want to limit? Again, like I said, it decreases the time for exercise. It delays bedtime. So a lot of kids aren't getting enough sleep, enough healthy sleep because they're up all night staying on their screens. Delayed learning and social skills for young kids that are spending a lot of time on screens that are not really developing their expressive language skills, their social, emotional, personal, social skills. Really important to take a break from the screen. Can negatively impact school performance because it takes away time from studying. Negative impact on self-esteem. You know, everybody posts their best version of themselves online, and that's what these kids are comparing themselves to. Risky behavior. So we see things like the TikTok challenges, things like that. There's cyberbullies, there's predators, inappropriate content for age, and just advertising that's geared toward children. So we saw that teenagers spread 9 hours or more a day. Here's the actual AAP guidelines. So less than 18 months, they really say try to avoid screen time. The exception is being, you know, it was wonderful during COVID that we could talk with each other via Zoom and other modalities like that. So, you know, that's one exception that they do make for the less than 18 months. 18 months to 24 months, they still say still very limited and really focusing on if they're going to be at a screen, still make it interactive with a parent or a peer in video chatting. 2 to 4 years is less than an hour a day, and 4 and up is 2 hours or less a day. So when I have to talk to the adolescents and teenagers in clinic that, you know, the actual recommendation is 2 hours or less a day, this is shocking. And I do explain, you know, it's important for all the reasons that I expressed on the last slide, and their brain's still developing. And so, you know, too much screen time can actually interfere with that executive functioning and frontal lobe development. So really, you know, pulling back on the screen time a little to improve our overall health. 5210. So real quick, this is a mnemonic that or a visual that a lot of offices will use. 5210 is easy to remember. 5 or more fruits or vegetables a day. 2 hours or less of screen time. 1 hour more physical activity, and 0 no sugary beverages, really sticking to water. So remember, have fun, be silly, make happy memories, because they just grow up way too fast. And if your kids see you having fun, being silly, and being active, they're more likely to too. Thank you. I'm going to hand it over to Victoria.
Hi, everyone. My name is Victoria. I am the therapist at IHA Trinity Health Pediatrics in Plymouth, and then at the Livonia Schoolcraft. We see pediatric patients in office and virtually. We are short-term therapy, so we meet for 6 to 12 sessions bi-weekly with patients in the clinic. We work on coping skills, providing a space for kids to just talk about feelings, learning to identify feelings, and really learning how to calm their bodies down when they feel overwhelmed. I am a licensed clinical social worker. I've been at IHA for just over a year. And before I was here, I worked as an infant mental health early childhood therapist in Wayne County. So today we will be talking about social emotional development, also learning to respond to your child's big feelings when they feel overwhelmed, teaching them how to calm their bodies down. I'll also provide some tips when kids get older in middle school and high school age on how to connect and build relationships with your child. And then I'll provide some in the moment calm down strategies. So what is social emotional development? This is the ability to express, recognize, manage emotions, and appropriately respond to the emotions of others. So this meaning we learn how we feel, and we also learn how to connect with others and identify how we are feeling. So through social and emotional development, children start to understand who they are. They learn to recognize their emotions and how to interact with others. So a lot of times with young kids, when they're feeling upset or angry or frustrated, it can be overwhelming because they don't know what that feeling is. So in therapy and with parents, we learn to identify when my body feels hot, when my palms are sweaty, that's when I feel angry, or I feel nervous when I feel butterflies in my stomach. And social emotional development is very helpful because children learn how to engage with others, they learn how to build relationships, and it also builds their confidence. They learn to be empathetic towards others, and also they learn to explore and engage with their environment. And when a child is very curious, when they're getting into things around the house, and keeping you busy, that's actually a sign of positive social emotional development, meaning that they know that they can get into things, they can get hurt, they can feel unsafe, but they know they have their parents that they can go to when they need support. So parents play a very important role in social and emotional development because you are the most consistent relationship for children. So they know you from the beginning, from their first moments. They know who you are. You teach them to trust others. You teach your children where to go for help, how to seek comfort, and so it's really important to foster those relationships, and that could be done by being affectionate, nurturing with your child. That could be reading together, listening to music, playing games, playing activities, experiencing joy together. So this just means like having fun. If you enjoy a sport with your child, if you enjoy going to a park, bike riding, and also special traditions like every Monday we do coloring for 30 minutes, or I go for ice cream on Sundays with my mom and dad. Like children really love that one-on-one time. And a lot of times, even with middle schoolers and high schoolers in therapy, they'll say, like, I wish I could just talk to my parents more. I wish I could see them more. I wish we can just have time between us where it's just my mom and dad, not my other siblings. So that's just really important to keep in mind. And also letting your child try new things and complete tasks independently on their own. So giving your child responsibilities, like if they want to empty the dishwasher, if they want to clean up, if they want to help outside, if they want to garden, like those type of things teach them to believe in themselves, to teach them to be confident. So dysregulation in children. We've all witnessed moments, we've all been parts of moments where kids are just really upset, having a hard time. When I think of this slide, I think of being at the grocery store and you see a child's just crying or yelling, screaming, having a tantrum, and parents are like trying to figure out what to do next, how to get people's eyes to focus on other things in the store. So I just want to say that this is normal. Kids get upset. Sometimes they get upset for no reason. Sometimes they get upset because you say no, and that's okay. I think a lot of times as a therapist, when I meet a family, they say, oh, they are refusing to go to bed when it's time. They say no to everything. It's hard to get them to calm down when they have big feelings. And I just say, that's normal. That's child development. That is normal and it's okay. And so just knowing in those moments, sometimes all your child needs is to hear, you're safe, I'm here with you, let's work through this together. So yeah, I just think it's important to just highlight the fact that it's okay if there's meltdowns and tantrums. It's not excessive, but just to be there with your child in that moment, however you can. Also, I want to touch on when behaviors may change. So a lot of times I see patients because they've had a stressor or a life change. And this could be something big like parents divorce, they move to a new city, they're moving to a new school. It could be I'm starting third grade, I feel nervous about that. Sometimes it's a sibling is moving to their own room and the patient is sleeping in their room by themselves for the first time. So it could be anything. Kids strive off consistency and routine that soothes anxiety. So when there is a change, sometimes you'll see a more anxious mood. They're worried. They don't want to get out the car at drop off. They want to be around you more. They have lots of questions. about things, like they're starting something new and they're wondering if you will be there the whole time, who will be there. That's symptoms of like they feel a little anxious or somewhat anxious. Or also after a life change, you may see a sad mood. They don't want to try new things. They're not really active like they used to be, and that's okay. Usually 3 to 6 months after a big change, you might see changes in behavior. And also another change might not be sometimes it's anxious, sometimes it's down, but it also could be they're saying no more, they're upset more, they're frustrated more. And kids really communicate how they feel through their behavior. Their actions are usually saying something. And also sometimes behavior changes occur and there wasn't a big change. They didn't move schools, everything is the same, and they just feel different. They feel down more, or they feel worried more. And usually over time, it comes out that they saw something scary on TV, a friend said something, or sometimes we just don't know. And that's okay, as long as we work with kids to let them know it's okay to have feelings, it's okay to be frustrated, it's okay to be sad. It's just when we feel that way, how can we help ourselves, or how can we go to others for help and support? Also, I think a lot of times children can feel shame around experiencing certain emotions, like being happy, being excited. Those are emotions that we really play up in children. But when a child is mad or frustrated or throwing things, like we feel like, okay, we need to fix this right away. And sometimes that gives the message that you shouldn't be frustrated or you shouldn't feel mad. And I do this in sessions and with parents by saying, I don't label feelings as good or bad. Happy doesn't mean a good feeling, bad doesn't mean you feel angry, you feel frustrated. These are just feelings. Some feelings are harder to experience than others. It's easy to be happy, it's easy to be excited, but sometimes when we feel upset or angry, we don't like that. It makes our body feel hot. It makes our stomach hurt. We get a headache. And some emotions are definitely uncomfortable. Like I said, being angry, being frustrated, that's a feeling that a lot of us don't like. So we try to shy away from it. We try to say, I'm not upset, I'm not frustrated. And that happens a lot in sessions. And the child is giving me all the body language that they are upset and they are frustrated. So I would say it's okay to be angry, but let's focus on how we can calm our body down. So, how to respond to big emotions and feelings, empathy and validation, that goes a long way. So, just seeing your child by saying, I see that you're upset. How can I help you? I see that you're frustrated. What do you need in this moment? Or sometimes just reminding your child that they're safe, that they're okay, and you're always going to be there to help them. And this can be done by acknowledging the feeling with a calm tone and a calm body language. If your child is upset and you feel upset, and there's just a lot of big feelings in the moment, that can escalate. So sometimes as the parent, you might have to bring yourself down by deep breathing, taking a moment to pause, and then getting back in the moment with your child and saying, it's okay. How can I help you right now? It's okay that you feel upset, but let's try some things to calm our body down. And at the end of the presentation, I have lots of strategies to try, by the way. Understand that some children may not want to be alone in these moments. I'm definitely from a generation of like, okay, you need to take a break, so let's go to timeout. But sometimes that's scary. Sometimes kids don't want to be alone when they're upset or when they feel frustrated or overwhelmed. So it could be, let's take a break in your room together, or let's create a calm down area. And I call it a calm down zone. But I invite families to give this area whatever they would like to call it. I've heard like down, 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 under, whatever feels good. This is a place where kids can go by choice. They can go there alone, they can go there with a parent, but this is a place where there can be fidgets to squeeze when kids are upset, and this is all ages. They love things that they can squeeze and things that are soft. I go to Five Below weekly to get new fidgets for my office, and they're really cheap, just something soft, something to squeeze. So in this calm down zone, there can be fidgets, there can be things to color, things to draw, there can be old paper or old mail that you don't need anymore, and kids can ball this up, they can rip it up, they can do whatever they feel like can bring them down and help them get back to the moment of where they feel some calmness. So social emotional development in teen years. So this is a time of a lot of change. This is time where there can be conflict, where there can be frustration. There's a lot of strong and complex emotions because kids are changing fast. Their bodies are changing. They may feel different. They may start to look different. They may sound different. So feelings can be unpredictable, or they can feel random. I hear all the time, like, we could be having a really good time. I hear this from parents. We're having a really good time, and then out of nowhere, she's upset with me. He's mad. He doesn't want to hang around me. And again, that's normal child development in the teen years. Kids or preteens and teens, they tend to want to be more social with their friends or people their age, or they tend to want to be alone, less family time. And so at this time, it's just good to continue to build those relationships with your child, to get to know what they're interested in, to spend time with them when you all are able, because this is also a time where teens become more involved with school and sports and extracurricular activities. Also, later in the teen years, emotional regulation becomes easier at times. Teens are able to, especially high school age, sometimes take a step back, reflect, and think about what they're feeling. This helps a lot in friendships. Like when you're young and a friend takes a toy or something you don't like, it's easy to just snatch it back and maybe hit them. But at this age, we're able to be more empathetic. We can say, I can kind of see why my friend made that choice. Let's see if we can move forward from this. And so also, I just want to go back to like the child development. At this age, there's a lot of independence, and you're learning who you are in your teenage years. So teens are thinking who they are, where they fit in. They might have a new style, they might change their hair, they might listen to different music, and they really want to be like their friends. I see this a lot in my sessions of their friends dress like this, or their friends have these type of hobbies, and they're really into it, and I just want my child to be themselves. Well, at that age, they are very influenced by their friends, their peers, what's going on at school. Also, teens will test their abilities, they'll try things out. They might have played soccer for a really long time, and they may decide, like, I think I want to try a different sport. Maybe I want to take a break from sports. And also at this time, change is constant. Like I said, things change quickly. One week they're into this type of music, the next week they're into something else, and that's okay. I also want to say something to think about is like brain development in your teenage years. You are typically more risky, trying things that you have never tried before. This may be safe or unsafe. So I think it's really important for parents to have boundaries, and sometimes just saying, we don't do that in our house. We don't engage in those type of activities, and they might be uncomfortable conversations. It might be frustrating, but that's okay to have conflict because we can listen to each other. But sometimes you have to make the decision, and your child, your teenager may be upset with that, but boundaries are very important during the teenage years. So how can parents help? At this time, during teenage years, like I said earlier, continue to build a trusting relationship. That's very important. Model the behavior that you would like to see in your child, how you handle conflict, how you communicate, how you make decisions. Listen to their feelings and frustrations. They may be mad about something and you have no idea why they would feel mad about that decision that you made or something you said no to. But all you have to do is listen and acknowledge, I see that what I said made you very upset. I'm sorry, that was not my intentions. I apologize. So, like I said earlier, just validate and provide empathy. Get to know their interests and their friends. So, also in teenage years, kids will start to reflect on their values, what they believe in, which may be different from you. All you have to do is be curious about that. Listen, it might be something that you don't know where they got that idea from. As long as it's not harmful to themselves or anyone else, listening is great. And encourage them to be social and to try new things. Because being social, that's how they'll make friends, that's how they'll build their confidence up, that's how they will learn to believe in themselves even more. And think of conflict as an opportunity to connect with your teen. So conflict isn't always a frustration or a time where there's a lot of tension. Conflict is you have a perspective, someone else has a perspective, and we can talk about that. We can talk about how we see things two totally different ways and try to meet each other in the middle. And sometimes as a parent, you will not be able to meet your child in the middle, and that will be okay. They might be frustrated, they might be angry about that, but that's okay. That's part of the relationship. So this next slide, I have some coping skills and calm down strategies. These are more so focused on younger kids. On my next couple of slides, I have some that teenagers might enjoy. In my sessions with kids, I do a lot of mindfulness, deep breathing, how to self-soothe and regulate the body. So this goes for anyone. When we feel upset, when we feel nervous, anxious, worried, frustrated, it helps to calm and soothe our body. This can be done by drinking warm things, going outside, drinking water, pausing, closing your eyes, taking a break, listening to music. These are some common ways I do this with younger kids, elementary age kids. So cookie breathing is a popular one, and all these are on Google. So they'll come right up. But cookie breathing is just breathing in to smell the cookies and breathing out to cool the cookies down. Roller coaster breathing is just tracing your hand. So when you go up the hill on the roller coaster, you breathe in. When you get to the top of the hill, you breathe out and you do all your fingers. Or if you just need a couple deep breaths, you can just do a couple fingers. Candle breath is smelling the candle, blowing it out. Hot cocoa breathing, same thing, smelling the hot cocoa, cooling it down. There's also mini yoga poses for kids that are relaxing, which I included. Other coping strategies, just being creative. In office, I do a lot of calm down jars, and you just get a mason jar and fill it up with water. You add food coloring, and you can put glitter. Sometimes I put like small beads so it can make cool sounds, and they just shake it up. And as the calm down jar settles, you take deep breaths. We also do a lot of coping skills jars. So this is just a jar that you have, and kids can like take paper, draw different calm down strategies on the coping skills paper that you put in the jar. I'm sorry, that probably was very confusing. But what I'm saying is you just write coping skills down on pieces of paper. That could be cookie breathing, that could be roller coaster breathing, that could be drawing a picture, and you just cut that out of the piece of paper and put it inside the jar. So you fill the jar up with different coping skills. And then when kids feel upset, they can go get the jar, shake it, and they pull out a coping skill. coloring, drawing, painting, emoji charts are very helpful. And again, these are just on Google. Emoji charts are just pieces of paper that have different emoji faces on them. And when kids feel upset, they feel frustrated, they can point to a face and say, this is how I'm feeling right now. Brain breaks, that's squeezing a fidget, that's flexing your muscles. So I call this be a heart. You make a fist really tight and you release it. You squeeze, release. It's just a way to calm the body down. And also another popular one is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you just use all of your senses. You can use it in any order. It could be 5 things you can touch, 4 things you see, 3 things you hear, 2 things you smell, 1 thing you taste. And that could be just used in any moment of like, let's calm down, let's take a minute, let's ground ourselves. These are also some really good books. Find Your Calm, Breathe Like a Bear. Breathe Like a Bear is a very popular one that I use in the office. It's just full of mindfulness techniques, but they use animals. So there's like, be a bumblebee, be a monkey, be a lion. Flower breath is just full of different mindfulness exercises. Find Your Calm, and also Invisible String. This book is very helpful for kids who are like struggling with being away from their parents. So if they're having a hard time at school, if they have a hard time at a babysitter, things like that, this book is just about saying, even when mom and dad or whoever my caregiver is, when they're not around, we're still connected. So I really enjoyed that book. This is a resource that I give every patient and family I see in the office. These are 50 coping tools. So when I talked about the coping skills jar, these are activities that kids can cut out and they can put in the coping skills jar to use when they have big feelings, when they feel frustrated. The popular ones are build something, cuddle, play with my pet, cry, play a game, bounce or throw a ball. And this next slide, these are self-soothing strategies. And I think these are very helpful for teens, but they're also very helpful for adults as well. And these are some of the techniques that I spoke about earlier. Drinking things that are warm, that really calms the body down when we feel upset, when we feel dysregulated. Wrapping yourself up in blankets, that calms the body down. Wearing comfortable clothes, giving yourself a hand massage. So if you have a lotion that you really enjoy the smell of, just taking that and rubbing it in on your hands, that's very calming. So these are just techniques that can be used whenever. Some of them you can do during a meeting at work, even adults. Close your eyes for 10 seconds and think of a place that's calming and relaxing. So that's all I have for today, and I welcome any questions or anything I can elaborate on or further explain.
Excellent. Okay, so if you have a question for either Victoria or Dr. Pollak, drop it into the Q&A where the 2 speech bubbles are, and I have a couple to kind of lead us off. So Victoria, you talked a lot about coping strategies, and many of them are calming, but what if you have a child who prefers to hit a pillow or scream or do something that's kind of the opposite? Is that an acceptable way to cope and to calm the body down?
Yes, absolutely. I think that some kids, when they have big feelings, they have a lot of energy. So I do use those coping skills as well. That could be jump up and down 10 times, run in a circle as fast as you can, hit a pillow, rip up paper, ball paper up in a tiny piece, if that's what makes you feel good. A coping strategy is anything you can do to distract yourself when you feel upset and frustrated. So it's whatever feels good, and you can define a coping skill however you would like.
Okay. And when a child has those big emotions, so if they slam a door, it looks like this person had someone who slammed a door and it broke something. So when a child has those type of reactions during a big emotion, is it appropriate to have consequences or punishment, or is it something where you say, okay, we didn't use a great coping skill, here's what we can try next time? Like, how do you approach that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. There are a lot of times where parents come in and things are thrown or kicked around the room at home, and we come in and we say, like, I was very upset and I might have messed something up at home. And that's what happens when kids get upset. And I think consequences are totally fine, but explaining. So today we made a decision, and I don't like to frame decisions as good or bad. I just say, like, we made a choice that wasn't the best in that moment, because I think sometimes when it's you made a bad decision later, that gets to be, well, I make bad decisions a lot, so I must be a bad kid. So I say, like, not a good choice. So when that happens, explain the choice and also explain what they could have done instead. So next time when you feel upset, instead of slamming or breaking a door, let's use our coping skills. Let's go in our room, let's hit our pillow, let's squeeze a fidget, let's throw a ball in the air, not to hit the ceiling or break anything, but like soft balls that they can just toss up in the sky, in the room, outside, wherever. And consequences are, you made that choice. So tonight we might not get movie time, or we might do reading. It's consequences are okay, but just explain why they have the consequence and be consistent. That's what kids need, is consistency, so they know, if I do this, if I make this choice, then I will get this consequence every time. Because if it's not every time, it's, oh, sometimes I get away with it, and this might be the time that I get away with it. So let's go for it. Let's see what happens.
Right. So it sounds like the rule is you can, as long as you don't hurt anyone or yourself or break anything, right? Okay. So
That's right. Whatever is allowed in the house to calm down is okay. So, like, when kids get upset, sometimes they want to be aggressive. And if that's a pillow, if that's squeezing a ball, if that's ripping paper, then I would say that's okay. But I'm just one therapist. But someone might disagree.
got it. So we have someone who's asking how to schedule with Victoria. So that would go through either Plymouth or Schoolcraft Campus Pediatrics. And Victoria, can you speak to, should this person make an appointment with a pediatrician first to get a referral, or can she schedule directly with you?
Yes, so Orchard does not currently have a therapist, but I am able to see patients from Orchard. So you can reach out to your pediatrician and they can send the referral, or they can message me on Teams and I can explain how they can send the referral to me. And I would be happy to schedule. The only reason why a patient could not be scheduled with me is if they are not a pediatric patient at IHA. There are primary cares who see kids. We cannot see kids from primary care. We can see kids from any IHA pediatric office. And I'm just one of 4 peds therapists as well.
Got it. And you were at Plymouth and Schoolcraft. I'm not sure if I misspoke there. I didn't mean to say you were at Orchard.
No, I don't think you said that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fine. But yes, I'm at Plymouth and Schoolcraft.
Okay, perfect. But good to know that you can be referred to see Victoria if you are seen in a different pediatric practice. And there are a number across Southeast Michigan here. There are a number of practices. So we will share the link so you can see where all of our pediatric practices are and find one that works for you. And I want to also mention, we will include the great tools and resources that both Victoria and Dr. Pollak shared in their presentations in the email that will follow up in the next couple of days. So Dr. Pollak, we have a question about screen time. Are educational games part of that 2-hour limit, or is that something that can be kind of look past since they're, sort of learning something?
So educational games are still considered part of that recreational screen time that the AAP bases their recommendations on. So even if you're using educational game for younger kids, it's still recommended that you're sitting there doing it in more of an interactive style. Where that kind of separates a little bit is a lot of academics and the older kids are on iPads and screen time now. And so I think that's why the AAP specifically designates that they're recommended recreational screen time in those recommendations. So separate from what they're required to do from school for completing assignments, reading assignments, this is what for that. But the educational games and stuff really kind of fall into that.
Okay. And there's another question about food. So I may prepare something for dinner and the kids decide they don't want to eat it. It could be something that they've liked in the past, or it could be something new. So the rule is they can have a bowl of cereal instead. Is this a mistake?
So I'm not going to say it's a mistake because there's definitely different styles to handling the situation. I do think that having them sit at the family and to offer the same food that you're offering is ideal, and really acting excited if they do take bites. A lot of people, and what I say too is if they don't want to eat what you prepare at the time, maybe slide that away. And when they're hungry later, try offering that same food. Because again, it can take multiple times of offering it for them to like it. I'm a parent, so yes, does that happen where every once in a while we become that short order cook? Yeah. But the ideal thing is to kind of just re-offer the prepared food from earlier.
Okay. And how long should the formula test period be if my baby is showing some stomach issues? So how long should you let those issues go until you realize maybe this isn't the right formula?
So I think the best thing is consult your pediatrician whenever there's a doubt. Babies can do lots of funny things that maybe are just normal for babies. Sometimes they get really grunty. Sometimes they'll turn red. They'll kind of scrunch up. And a common interpretation of this is they're having some kind of stomach issue. Do I need to change the formula? And a lot of the times this is just kind of normal infant fussiness, normal infants trying to pass bowel movements, something we call dyschezia. And so it's really important that if you're thinking, maybe I do need to change formula, you could always call your pediatrician and talk it through. Whenever you do change to a different formula, if there is an indication, it will take like 1 to 2 weeks to fully notice that switch over in their system too. So, it's important to not run into the trap of, changing formula every couple of days due to a concern. Without really letting anything have an effect.
Can you mix in? So if they have, like when you're going to formula, do you ever do like a mix of breast milk and formula throughout the day to like ease into it?
Absolutely. It helps them adjust. So it's totally fine. Usually I'll say even like 75-25 and gradually titrate up to higher amounts of formula. And I tell families the same too, because at that 1 year age where you transition over to milk, some babies really have difficulty with that transition. Either they don't like the taste or they're just so used to formula or so used to the breast milk that you can mix those two. So definitely cutting and titrating is completely fine.
Okay. This question could be for both of you to get your perspective. So I have a daughter and she's having some issues with some kids at camp. She doesn't have the confidence to talk to the teacher about it and is begging me not to reach out or get involved. Is it okay to send an email kind of undercover and ask the teacher not to make her aware of it, or just hands off, let her work through it?
Yeah, so I'd be curious to see what Victoria has to say too. From my perspective, I think that that's absolutely okay. I think there's kind of two things that I think are important in this situation. One is really, talking to her daughter, looking, what are the concerns, what is the worst case scenario? What are you worried about? And really continuing to try to encourage her to, have that ability for her to go in and handle it a little bit of herself with the teacher. But I do honestly think it's okay from my perspective on the back end to maybe send that email just so that the teacher can have eyes out and maybe help manage it peripherally, just because I do know that things, depending on student age, can escalate. And that way you have somebody who's there and can actually see the behaviors in the classroom and help from that perspective. But I'd be curious to see what Victoria says.
Yeah, I would say I agree with that. I think encouraging your daughter in the beginning to like problem solve together, like how can we support you through this? Like, what is the person saying? And also, what am I trying to say? Exploring that fear of if your teacher does know, what feels scary about that? Do you feel like other kids are going to call you out because you told the teacher? But I definitely think sometimes kids experience like a lot of shame when saying like someone's making fun of me, someone's being mean. So sometimes parents do have to step in and say like, okay, when you go to summer camp, when you go to school, like you need to feel safe. You're just there to learn and make friends. So it's okay to step in sometimes, but also like explore that fear of like, if your teacher is involved, what are you thinking could happen?
I always reassure kids too. Schools are very used to handling this situation. There is a lot of drama in the schools, especially as kids get older. And so the school counselors, the teachers, I feel like they get pretty good at navigating these situations. So not to draw that individual child in as like the tattletale or the person that told on the other student. So knowing that other children have had to approach this too, and it's been okay. They've handled it okay.
That's a great point. So maybe even understanding how they handle it as a parent, from the beginning would be good because you can kind of talk through it with the child. This is how they do it, or this is what they do, or, according to the principal or the teacher. So that's an interesting idea. Yes, they are, I'm sure, well versed in handling childhood drama. Okay, one more question on screen time. So if you rely on screens, especially during the summer, during the workday, and over 2 hours is like a daily thing, how bad is it? And are there ways that we can kind of make it less bad?
Sure. So I mean this is what I tell my patients all the time. There's recommendations and guidelines, and then there's the real world that we live in. So what I would take from this is less is best. So the less time your kid can spend on the screen is ideal, and trying to offer them, it's hard, especially you're working, you're homeschooling, offer them other activities that are available and that they can developmentally do by themselves. So maybe it's coloring, maybe you prepare things for a craft. Things like that are just alternatives. But then really, if life is life and they're stuck on the screen, then just once you're able to reconvene and get together, really spending that time together doing something where you're socializing with each other, you're interacting, playing, having fun, so that they still do get that, that interaction and that quality time when they are not on the screen. And so there's recommendations there, and the biggest thing is really just balancing it with everything else, I would say.
I think that is all the questions we have. So thank you both so much. This was just a ton of great information for every age. And I myself am appreciative of your time and expertise. And I will share all of what you shared with everyone who was on the call today. And they can expect to see that in the next couple of days. So again, thank you so much. And I hope you both have a wonderful evening.